So I'm going to talk about this project, and this is just an overview of what's down there. These are what I'm calling tapestry engineering drawings, and if you get a chance, I have a website with all of the elements and their histories and where they come from that include for each of the pieces. And these are the collaged patent fabrics that are around the prints. And each of them there are many patents that go into them, and parts of the patents from the golden age of invention, which is from 1870 to 1940. And then also the plushies with pockets, and this is all downstairs. I'm going to give you some things that inspired me for this project. And I went to the doctor and I had to fill this form out. And at the time, I was a stay-at-home parent, and I kind of didn't know what to write because it says if you're not currently working, and then what do you mark? And so I marked homemaker, but then I thought, well, what is a homemaker? I mean, I don't know what is homemaker. First of all, if you're a stay-at-home parent, are you not working? And is a homemaker make homes? And I just had a lot of questions. And then I thought, well, actually, if I think about this in a positive way, it implies making things, maybe inventing. And then also, at the same time, I was finding articles on how ChatGPT is going to change housework for me and how it's going to take away all of the chores that I do, which I can't think of how it can. I've read these articles, and it's not going to like feed my kids. It's not going to clean the floor, really. I mean, it's not going to clean the bathroom. It's not going to do the laundry. It's not going to make sure my kids do their homework, or that I walk them to school and they get there on time and we don't get a call from the principal saying you're late. There's a lot of things I just couldn't figure out how it was going to solve those problems. And I thought, well, I've been thinking a lot about invention, and of course I'm always thinking who invented this technology, and then I got a broader thought like who is an inventor? And so I turned to Midjourney, if anybody has played with it. And this is what Midjourney told me an inventor is. This was actually recent. I've looked it up several times. So this was like right now, basically. This is what an inventor is for Midjourney. And I kept asking, what is an inventor? Now, I will say I didn't add in extra details. But when I've used this before, I don't think to add in extra details. So this is what it gives me. I tried crayon. This is what an inventor is on there right now, or at least September 16th. But I have actually found so many inventors that don't look like those images. Here's Judy Reed. She's considered one of the first Black women to receive a US patent. She made a dough kneader and a roller. This is Sarah E. Good, considered to be the second Black woman to receive a US patent. And this is in 1885. And actually, I have this picture book because picture books, and I'm finding, are doing a really good job of DEI work, like better than you would ever imagine. And I have this book, so I'm gonna just pass it around. Which is kind of part of the point of this, because we need to show people when they are 5 and 3 this book. And this is Miriam E. Benjamin, who was considered to be the third Black woman to receive a US patent for a gong and signal chair for hotels. And this is kind of the precursor to what we find in an airplane, where you can signal to get someone to know that you need something. My kids are inventors. Actually, they're a way better inventor than I am, and probably a lot of people. And we could talk about lots of reasons why that is. They bring together unexpected things in ways that my mind doesn't. And all of the people that designed these patents are inventors. I'm going to take a little detour really quickly and ask, what is the golden age of invention? And of course, I had to ask Midjourney, and here's what Midjourney said the golden age of invention is. I asked it again, and this is what it said. And you'll notice there's only one person who might identify as a woman, and they are not really, I don't know about it if they're really inventing. They're kind of looking like a Greek goddess of some sort, and also doing what I call presentation labor. So that's just, but here's the Adobe's AI program, which is called Firefly, and here's what they gave me. So it's a little bit maybe better, we could argue. So this is back to my work. I use collage, I cut and paste, and use fragments and layering and combining and arranging. And here are some of the elements. This is just kind of a smattering of some of the things that I bring together in this. And I realize as I'm doing it, I feel like I'm a bit of a collector, and I have some of these things. Hi, Melanie. Some of these things I've been collecting for years, and I just like hold on to them and love something about them, and then they find their way into the project. And I've been reading about collage artists, and I think that's a lot of collage artists do this, where they have like something for 10 years and they just haven't quite figured out which piece it's going to be in, and that seems to be what I've been doing with this project. Also connects to the idea of patchwork and mending. And actually, Melanie, thank you, you're here. You mentioned the idea of mending, and I was like, yes, mending. And I'm constantly mending and doing patchwork. These were one of my daughter's favorite pants. My kids get holes in their clothes in a second, and she didn't want to give it up, so just mend it. And then also, I'm mending my body all the time. I've had several surgeries for cancer. So I think there's a bit of that in there, mending my body, mending my kids' clothes, mending patchwork. And then there's a lot of digital kind of remnants and cutting and copying and pasting and moving. And then I transform some of the parts into 3D elements, which makes sense because it's technology, but also it's my past as an engineer when I designed. I spent a lot of time in CAD, a lot of time. And layers. So layers are important because I feel like partly they reflect my process as a caregiver. If you're a caregiver, I don't think you ever finish anything ever. It's kind of like just what it is. And there's like no beginning and no end, but obviously life is that way too, but it just feels really a lot like that when you're caregiving. And then also the body and how with cancers and surgeries, I feel like nothing's ever feels permanent. So probably that's partly why I use a lot of layers. Also with the responsibilities of care work, this process works well for me. So I can do a little bit, move it around a little bit, and then go and wash the toilet or whatever it is I have to do next for caring. So for collage, it allows me to do things like bring connections between things that were unrelated. And I'm going to just go to this because I'm also going to point out the patterns that are used in this. Each of these has an animation and a little game. And then I go through and I talk about, or I show what the patents are. So this is one from 1897 for a reclining high chair, which I know you're probably, if you have kids, you're like, no, that's really bad. But still, there's an idea here. Don't recline them when they're eating. But there's an idea here. You can tell like what someone was thinking when they made this. They were like, the child is going to fall asleep right after they eat. Some children do. So that's what the thinking was. And that's the part that I think is really interesting. And then this film, so if you go to the website, you'll be linked to really fun silent films from a long time ago, like this one where it's this girl or woman who likes to read, but her parents want her to knit, and she loses the ball of wool, and then she just wrecks the whole house, and I just love it. And then I was given a bunch of old photographs that are my relatives who I don't actually know, they aren't labeled. These children are related to me somehow, so I had this photograph. And then flying cars, and bottoms, and lumpectomy, and then doll patents. And they're all linked here if you want to see the patents. There's doll-related patents and then hair-related patents in this one. Okay. Collage lets me connect like everyday images to patents and to contemporary ideas. And also to use absurdity and science fiction and impossibility. And I'll show you this example because this was a children's book that I found on the Library of Congress website from 1880. And if you have kids, you probably read these books to them about, like, it has the word and the object, and you're like showing them, this is what this is. But I feel like looking at this, you can learn so much about, first of all, what it was to the kitchen looked like at the time. I could probably analyze that image for a lot of time, but so I'm taking things like this, and I mean, is this what we want to show our children? This is the kitchen. So we have women here that look like they're probably in the image. It looks as though they're doing this work and they're kind of supporting the work of these people here who are doing the cooking, who look like they have a little bit more control. Anyway, we could go on and on, but this is the kind of thing when you're teaching your kids, like, what is an object? This would be what you would maybe show in 1880. And then this film, look at it. It's considered to be the first film directed by a woman, but also maybe the first narrative film. And she plucks babies out of the cabbage patch, but they're cardboard cabbages, and the babies are real. And I've written a thing about this because it's so interesting, because it almost looks like she doesn't know how to hold the babies, which actually how I felt, because my first child was the first baby I ever held in my life. So I was like that person holding the baby that was like, I don't even know how to hold this baby. And then there's like a lot of layers in this that you could analyze. But also, is it about, I don't want to have to be pregnant. I just want to pluck a baby out of a cabbage patch. Like, pregnancy is hard. I don't want to do that. So anyway, watch it. And people have written other things about it, but those were my impressions. And here is the book, the patent. This is it's a bed, it's a desk, it's a cabinet, it's everything. Here is an image of, there aren't very many CEOs that are women in tech firms, and this woman is one. And she's in a quantum mechanics. So this is a contemporary image that I bring in. And then lots of patents, typewriters and bed-related patents. Okay. Collage lets me bring things from different times. So I can, but also still reference the original. And then it's a good process for me because I can move things and I can change them, and I can quickly make an association between something and then make an association between something else. And in this one, I have this is Lyda Newman's patent for a brush. She's a remarkable Black female inventor who patented the first hairbrush with synthetic bristles. And interestingly, what I wrote here is that, and this is what I found, this said she's the third, but I've actually found that she's not the third. By finding these patents, I'm like discovering this stuff about history. Like there were a couple other ones. So anyway, it's interesting. I feel like I'm a little bit of a historian, but I don't have history background. I guess I'm like an investigator. Here are suffragette images, and those are in there. And then this is a birthing chair. And then children's book. She looks very calm. If you look at the rest of the book, there's a lot going on in it. It's a fun book. And then here's a contemporary image. I'm going to say what I know about her, but if you look about her, there are people that question whether she did these things, and there's all this media about, did she really do this? But she is an American engineer and computer scientist, and she worked on developing an algorithm for imaging black holes. Now, if you start looking at her, there was a lot of trolls that question whether she did this. So this is a combined clothes and dishwasher. Awesome. And if there are engineers out there, I know what you're thinking. That's not a good idea for manufacturing. That won't work for all these other reasons. But I think one of the things we can think about is the ingenuity here. Like, these are neat ideas, and these are people that are creative. So anyway, these are historical images from my past. And then I have a couple other things related to venture capitals, and then bottle nipple patents, etc. It allows me to connect various media, like 2D and time-based, and I get to be playful. And I get to be mischievous and do unexpected things and invent impossible ideas. And here, in this one, this is a pessary, which is a tampon. And this was, well, some things say pessaries are a form of birth control too. So some of the pessaries that you'll see, actually that's part of their, what they say it does. And then here's a woman working with technology. I found a bunch of images like this on the Library of Congress website of women working with technology in different ways. Here's a combined stepladder and ironing board, which, I mean, it makes sense if you don't have a lot of space. So, right? Like, it's like, so, I think it's genius. But stepladder patterns and ironing patterns, more. Okay. I'll go quickly through the rest. You get a sense of what these are. This is, I get to transform 2D imagery into patterns for fabric, and I get to be subversive, but gently, so I don't alienate the viewer, because in this one, there's pictures of uteruses with a male, so these are uterus images, and then this is one of my relatives, his goatee. Thank you. And it can be messy, it can be complex, it can be non-conforming. I can resist production-based endeavors, which is like the goal of engineering. And so there's a lot in this one too. There's an adding machine in there. There's a saleswoman's pocket patent. And then I can speak to the inventiveness of diverse groups, and I can also invent logically illogical machines, as in this one. Oh, I have to point this out because I was just talking with Rebecca about aprons. There's a patent for an apron. And I never realized like how awesome aprons are until, oh, this one is a clothes mangles, which is like for ironing, but also like getting the wet out of the clothes. And these are other things, but I want to go to the patent for the apron. So, well, it's called a shirt waist protector, but it's basically like an apron. So it can protect the clothes, but then you have all these pockets, because as you might or might not know or experience, a lot of the clothing designed for women don't have pockets. So then we have aprons, and someone thought of that. Okay. I wanted to write this out because it was hard for me to put it into words, but I'm using absurdity. And by rendering things absurd, I can call attention to them. And I can question the logic of their reality. And if I just showed you an image of a patent, it wouldn't inspire you to like stop and rethink what is happening here. And it wouldn't point out the disconnect between what would be ideal and what reality is. And so the reality is that women's work with technology has been made invisible, and often their jobs in work with technology have been taken over by men once they become lucrative and important. It's just kind of this pattern that's happened. And so the images, they show them not, oh, this, oh, we'll talk about this one. So this is referencing, if you haven't read Mar Hick's book, if you're interested in this at all, it's a really interesting book on programmed inequality. And it's about how, well, Britain discarded women technologists. But the point that she makes is, or she brings up this image. And I think this is a good example, because this is the person, this is what the person looks like probably working with the technology. But this is the image that's shown. So I think she's doing what I call presentation labor, where what she's wearing is not good for that job. And it's to just make it look presentable in the way that we expect her to look. Whereas the reality is she's probably working really hard with the technology. I mean, she doesn't have her hair like that. She's not wearing heels. So I think that's just one of those, I would say, the times when the images show people not as the workers, but as objects doing the presentation of the technology as opposed to their work, to showing their work. These are just all the different elements of the patents. So each one is based on a theme, and you can go in and look at the patents if you want. I started, as I was doing my reading, oh, let me pass this out. This book is kind of where I started, but then I developed a new way of researching for myself that I call the Mary research strategy, where I just search for Mary because it was a very common name at that time. But a lot of the patents that I found are not in this, even though this is like a big, thick book. And this person, Autumn Stanley, did a lot of research, but there's still a lot of patents by women out there, and I'll pass that around just so you can see. So then I started searching like with my Mary research strategy, and I found a ton more than are in that, although that's a lot of work that person did. Okay, so women inventors. The numbers are pretty low. It's like 12%, although it's increasing, as you can see in this chart. It's increasing, and that's great. There's more work, I think, that can be done, and what are the barriers? I started to try to read, like, what are the barriers? Why is this happening? And as someone in engineering, I have my own thoughts, but also people are putting words to this. It's a very expensive and time-consuming process. Actually, my husband has like 18 patents, but every company that he's worked at pays for the attorneys. So if let's say I have an idea, I need like $10,000 to just go get a patent. So there's a barrier right there for like everybody that I know. Lack of knowledge about the process. I don't know the process, but if people that know the process and are in the network, they're going to get their patents through. Lack of relationships with attorneys. Process is intimidating. We don't have mentors. There's not a network. Fewer women in the sectors. This one I just read, which said that the sectors that a lot of patents are in are mechanical and electrical, I think it said, but there are fewer women going into mechanical and electrical and engineering. They're opting for what's like computer or industrial engineering or some of the other options. So that is another reason. And then there's these stereotypes about women in technology, that they don't take as many risks, that they don't speak up for their projects, and then they don't think about things as being commercialized. Maybe they have a fear of asking questions. Maybe they have a fear of seeming less intelligent, and they just need more confidence because they're a small group of people in this larger, bigger group of people. They're the minority. So those are some of the barriers. Some people have thought about what can we do, and this one was really interesting because it said, well, obviously there are large disparities based on socioeconomic class, race, gender. And then this article said, well, we just need to show kids images of diverse people inventing. And I kind of tend to agree, because if you have kids, you'll see they see it possible if they see it. Like if they see an image of it, they're like, oh, or they start out not thinking there's a barrier. And then when they get a little bit older, they see the barriers. And then, so I kind of tend to agree with this, that if a diverse group of people were exposed to a diverse group of inventors at a younger age, maybe we could close this gap a bit more. But then they have to have money, and I mean, there's a lot, but it's one thing. And then here's a quote that you might hear: necessity is the mother of invention. And I think this is partly true. Not all inventions work this way, but they kind of arise from people trying to fix problems that they encounter in their lives. So here we go with work with technology, fibers and textiles. I'm going to show you lots of images of people working with technology. Textile technologies. Here are some images and more. And I'm going to do a quick detour and ask just for you to think about, this is what AI gave me for textile technologies. What would be the difference if you were a child and you saw the word textile technologies next to these images or these images? It's just kind of a thought to think about. Also, robots and ChatGPT still can't so well. They call it the floppy cloth problem. And they have like a lot of ideas now about how they're gonna, but it's true, because it's like, it's something that's moving, and it's like so many variables, too many variables to like eliminate. You can't eliminate all the variables. But I just like to point out, my grandma is really good at sewing. She sewed all her clothes. My mom sewed a lot of her clothes. I'm not that good at sewing, but I can try. And so anyway, people can do some of these things. I'm just pointing that out. And next is, I'm going to go through some inventions that relate to fibers and textile. This is considered to be the first patent. We don't have the actual patent. I guess it was in a fire or something, but it was for a straw weaving technique by a woman. And then we have zigzag stitches. That's a patent by Helen Blanchard. Helen Blanchard also had a patent for a buttonhole stitch, and I love this machine. I just had to do a close-up because I'm like, oh, it's such a beautiful machine. I incorporated zigzag stitches into the work. And then here's a bunch of patents for textiles, sewing, and stitching by women. And then I talked a little, there was a question for myself also. Why are they printed on a fabric? And at first they were going to be printed on a large piece of paper. And I kept thinking, well, how many, they're going to get torn. Like when they get there, if they're just hanging with a piece of paper, I could put them behind foam core, but that won't hold up. And then what if I want to use them again? And I was like going through all these things. And then at the same time, I was also learning a little bit about how textile technology relates to the computer technology. And so like those two things were happening at the same time. And then I was like, oh my gosh, it should be printed on fabric because it is durable. First of all, I can like roll it up and mail it and I could use it again. And then I read about tapestries, and that's actually why they invented tapestries, or one of the reasons was because they could take a picture and you could take it with you. Whereas if it was on a paper or something, it's hard to travel with and it's also not durable. So I was like, well, that makes sense, then it should be a tapestry. And also I'm inspired by women's rights quilts and geese bend quilts. I love these. Look them up. And then crazy quilts. And then the baby back cribs, embroidered carriers of the mouth. And here's the point I was making about computer technology and sewing technology. So there's like the jacquard loom, and I don't know exactly how it works, but they have these punch cards, and basically that pattern just, you stick it in the machine, and the machine reads it based on, is there a hole or is there not a hole? And then it gives you the pattern for what you're trying to do for the piece. And that idea of a yes or no led to the idea of a computer yes or no kind of thing. So there were people involved in that, and this is very simplified, but I was trying to make it like, how can I say this in a simple way? But the punch cards give this idea that they're machine numbers and instructions, and then kind of tells you what to do with those numbers. And then Ada Lovelace proposed that the numbers could then be used for all data types, not just numbers. And that's kind of how the computers came to be. So it's like a little bit of the history, and then also the binary code in computer code where there's a yes or a no, a 0 or a 1. Hair makes its way in a lot of places in the work. I braid a lot of my kids' hair. People have braided hair for a long time. Hair is also very strong. It was used in catapults. It says, for strings to bend them, the women cut off their hair for want of other fibers. It's a strong fiber, but also there's a lot to be said about that. And then here's in this book, I was reading and I was trying to find hair inventions, and I came across this, and it says that Hazel, this brilliant woman, invented the bobby pin. And I thought, okay, that's great. But then I was like, I need to find this patent. And then I looked on Google, and Google tells me, no, Louis Marcus invented the bobby pin. And then I was like, oh, well, okay. So then I searched more, and I'm like, who invented the bobby pin? I asked ChatGPT, told me Louis Marcus invented the bobby pin. I kept going. I'm like, I can't find this patent. Because a lot of the patents are hard to find. I don't know if you've ever done patent searching. Even if you find them in that book, it's hard to find them on the Google patents because of however their system is. So I was like, it's got to be out there somewhere. I never actually found that patent. But I did find this, and this is way before 1916 and way before Louis Marcus. This is a hairpin, and this is in 1882, invented by someone named Mary. So anyway, I guess it's just like, there were things, and my point here is that you can say who invented the thing, but there are like thousands of years, and also even just like 50 years of things that came before that we just forget about, or we don't think about, or it's not in the news. So there's that, and that's a hairpin from 1882. There are a lot of other hairpins that women invented. And also the first person to invent the weave is Christina Jenkins. And she also had many other inventions, not just one. And so in the piece, I have little hair coming out. Also plushies. And this is a hard thing for robots to sew as well because it's amorphous and it has a lot of variables. And so women mostly sew them. And here we go with images I found of people working, women working on technology. Looms, sewing machines, mills, switchboard operators, typing pool and stenographers, human computers and punch card operators and tabulators, mechanical machines, and then here's what I was talking about my Mary research strategy. When you get on Google Patents, you can type in a name of someone, you can type in a date. And so I just started typing in all the names that were common at that time during the golden age of invention. And that's what I kind of used to find the other patents. And I know this isn't a good strategy, but this is what I could come up with. It's like something, and I have to make all the acknowledgments that these are names, and names don't necessarily identify your gender, and this is a Western perspective, and so even though your name is Mary, you might not identify as a woman. So all of that is true. So this is problematic in a sense, but what I could do. And all hope is not lost. This is what Adobe Firefly gave me for Adventure. So, I mean, okay. So what I got from this is there are people like working on this, and they're giving their opinion about what's happening. And I thought, okay, homemakers are working. They're making things, they're making ideas, they make things happen. If given agency, diverse groups of people need to be at the table of invention. And also, mothers can invent. They need the space, time, agency, support, images of role models, financial support networks, images that allow them to imagine it is possible. This is my worker ID badge. I just got a job at my kid's school. And this is a little detour. Midjourney gives me this for worker ID badge. And this goes on. It went on for 2 performances. You'll see it on. I just keep typing it in, and this is what I get. Now there's a couple, so there's one person that doesn't look like the rest, but there's fire. I mean, fire came before diverse groups of people. So did that weird orange head thing came before some other diverse groups. And a pink cartoon-haired woman also. So, yeah, but look, Adobe Firefly, doing a little better. So someone's helping them. So someone is in there. And then here's my performance. If you're free on Friday night, these are just images from the performance, and that's it. These are my goals, but I'm not going to go through them. If you want to talk about what my goals are. Does anybody have any questions?
The mic to you.
Oh, yeah.
I got it. This is my job.
Thank you for this. I have a comment and a question. So one is that some of the patents for African Americans may predate slavery, but they would be held in the names of their enslavers. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of people who do legal history around patents who talk about this connection between slavery and ownership of intellectual property. The other thing, my question is simpler, which is, can you talk about your use of color? In the way, I mean, you gave us a lot of technical information, which is fantastic, but how did you choose the colors or color? Or what does color mean in the way in which you're thinking about technology and women and all those things?
That's a good question that I don't know that I have an answer for at the moment.
It's beautiful. I mean, when you put the whole panel together, it looks like a quilt in the beginning.
Oh, well,
so
thank you for saying that.
It's like, oh, this is like quilting. Immediately I can see the note, the gesture towards it.
Thank you.
And quilters think about color and what goes side by side.
Yeah.
So did you always envision it as a collective? I think if we had the space, it'd be interesting to be shown in a quilting formation.
I love that. I don't have a good answer. Although I think those things, like, I probably look at subconsciously. And I go to a lot of fabric stores with my kids. So, and I mean, I've been sewing since grad school. But it hasn't looked like this. So this is kind of new. I wish I had a really solid, good answer for it.
Well, whatever you're doing without an answer is beautiful. Your intuitions are good. So.
Just so that on the recording. Thank you.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, the color question, I wonder if, because there's so much detail in the some of the pieces, I'm wondering if being monochromatic is a way to provide some clarity or some sense of I don't know, I feel like a lot of the things you talked about where this balance between chaos and a happy chaos and also feeling overwhelmed, and I wonder if color has something to do with that.
It definitely, that is a very astute observation, because that is how it feels like. But I don't know how, I don't know if I have words to say how the color connects to that.
How did you fill out the form?
I think I wrote something up in the side, because I didn't feel like homemaker really fit. And I think I might have said something like, well, are there other options or something? Which I guess is something for forms anyway, because I've heard a lot about, if you read about feminist, data science, forms are a huge, big issue, because you're limiting yourself to this category. And a lot of the categories don't fit with a lot of people. So there's always people that doesn't really fit for them. So actually, that's true in this case.
That was in the unemployed category, right?
Yeah. I mean, technically, I wasn't getting paid. You don't get paid to do care work. I mean, it's some care work you do, but as a stay-at-home parent, there's no. I think in other countries there is actually, but not here.
I'm going to hijack it. Does anyone have a question? I'm going to hijack it. Okay, Sarah. So, hi. Thanks everyone for being here. So I work in this building, and I've seen these images for a few weeks, and I just today started looking more closely at them. And I wondered if you could give us if you were to say where is a starting point at one of your pieces, for someone who's just walking in off the street, because they're kind of overwhelming, because there's so much going on, in a great way. But could you kind of talk us through how you would approach looking at the at one of the pieces? Is that okay to ask?
Yeah, I mean, anything's good to ask. I'm not sure that I'm going to have a good answer, but I will try. Okay. So I guess I could talk about, maybe this would help with the process. They started out as animations, and they started out as, if I go back, they started out as this, I don't know if it's a being or what, but it's this kind of, in this one, this kind of little element. That's what it started. Each of these started out as just this one thing. And then the animation, they don't have the backgrounds. I did that because then it made sense to me at the time to make them like a fabric. So in the animations, the backgrounds are related to all the objects. So for example, in the animation, these are stills of the animation. So I guess maybe watch the animations. That might be a good way to start, because then you see we can watch this one. And then they're each it's a contraption, and then the one that has all of them is which I just realized is not a good, there's not a good link to the whole thing on my website. But they go from one to the next. So anyway, it goes on for quite a while. Each one is a little like, they have a function, a made up function, and they do these very absurd things that are kind of not absurd. I would say maybe that would be, because then I guess you would see what the thing is, and then you could see it, like then you, when you look at the piece, then you see the actual thing inside of it.
Spend more time on the website. Question.
I'm so taken by the sound, the audio choices in them, and it also helps me. I imagine it might help me enter the 2D work also, like it does with the animation. I just love how they, they're reminiscent of like the Terry Gilliam Monty Python.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but you're doing it in digital style, all digitally as opposed to cut out, but you're retaining that sometimes awkwardness.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're doing more with like morphing and thing that the digital allows you to do. So I love that balance. Yeah, that's not a question. There's a quick question. Okay, Allison has a question, but quick. Oh, non-question. Were you using Adobe After Effects or other?
Yes, After Effects. Yeah, but also, I mean, I think for a lot of the. Well, I did Illustrator a lot for a lot of the like illustration parts. Yeah.
I'm also trying to formulate mine into a question. We all went to grad school together, so. Look, there's another one over there. It's Jim Leha. Classes of 06 and 07.
08.
And 08. Oh yeah, you're the junior.
Baby.
I guess I just want to, there's kind of a question in this, but I've also been doing kind of my own long-term project that is never probably going to take an artistic form because of the same probably barriers that you're investigating. But I sort of see this as a parallel in kind of making it in the art world too. And I wonder if, since you are also an artist, if you think about that, because you're using this kind of world of patents and invention and engineering. But I don't know, I think about like 80% or something of the students that go into art are women, and then you get to the faculty and the majority of the lecturers are women, and the tenure track might be slightly more men. At one point I counted these.
Yeah.
And then the leadership is usually more men. Of course, not across the board, not all men, but I just wondered if you thought of that kind of parallel story. And I don't know, I guess when we were all looking for jobs, first of all, we had the recession, but it seemed like all the jobs were very like, we don't want traditional fine arts anymore. We want really technical things that I felt like, it was like design and programming. I just wondered, if you.
Well, I would say that since I started looking at this, I see it like everywhere. Yeah. I hate to say that, but I mean, it's even in like, it's kind of everywhere.
Not the t-shirt sewing, maybe the classes have the math.
Well, I don't know, I can't say that there's research on this, but even like elementary education, the majority of the teachers are women, but the principals are often men. So it's I
When we did the library project, we saw that, we heard,
We did a library a piece on libraries here, and some of the librarians were telling us how more men are coming into it. It starts to seem more justified in a sense, but then also they leapfrog to other positions. We heard this firsthand from some of the librarians here in the U of M system.
I mean, it's tricky because it's the same issue, right? Like, you would like there to be diversity in all the fields. And so I see why, well, if librarians, it's not a diverse field, let's make it as diverse as we can. So it's not that I don't get how it happens, but it's just, yeah.
You're nicer than I am in your mind about it.
I'm not forgiving about it. What else?
Any other questions? Over here. Emily, all right. I got it. Gotta get my steps in.
I was wondering how, for lack of a better terms, being an outsider in your field, so being an art major in engineering and being an engineer in art majors, and being a woman in more male-dominated fields affect your art and affect how you go through everyday life.
I would say, as a female in engineering, and I was mechanical, and that is, like, my classes were, let's say, like 70 people, and I was like one of 4. It was actually really hard because you don't have the group. You don't have the group of the study partners. So, I would oftentimes be with, and I'm hoping I'm just gonna say that I hope that's different now, but when I did it, I experienced sexual harassment like all the time as a female because I had to work with the guys and I had to make sure that I had a team. And it just was what was happening then. Like, this was what, I started in 1997. I'm hoping that's not how it is. It might not be, but that's how it was for me. And I didn't realize it. It was normalized for me. And I didn't realize it until I got out of engineering and I went into a different field where that was not happening to me. And I was like, well, that was bad. And it affected me in ways that I didn't realize at the time. It made me feel like I didn't know what I was doing. So now when I have someone who comments on something like that in the context, I know what's happening and I'm more aware of it, but I didn't know then. It was just normalized. And so I was always working with men or boys, men or boys, whatever, because that's who was in my classes. But as a person now, also I'm hoping it's different now. But I did not experience that in art. So that's good. But also I think it's just because it's a bunch of people that are the same. If it's not diverse, these things happen. Like, you need diversity to make things change. So it wasn't diverse. And I think it's changing. So I'm hoping that the more diverse things are, those things won't happen. It'll stop before it even gets going. You know? That's what I hope.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sarah.